Just start out with an introduction about yourself and what motivated you to run for House District 83.
Well, my name's Jeff Kurtz. I was a 41-year employee. I hired out on the Santa Fe Railroad. I hired out as a locomotive fireman, became a locomotive engineer in 1975. I did that. Well, the BNSF, or the Santa Fe, was merged with the BN in '96. We became the BNSF. I finished out my career with them at the end of 2014, December of 2014, and for 10 years I was head of the Brotherhood of Locomotive Engineers and Trainmen's legislative department here in Iowa. So I spent a lot of time in Des Moines. I know my way around in Des Moines. Still, I've maintained some contacts. I've worked with the local labor chapters in the area labor federations, so I maintained a lot of my contacts there. When Jerry Kurtz announced at the end of January that he was retiring, I had never given any thought to running, and it was about 2 days later I started getting calls from various politicians, various union officials, various activists asking me if I'd consider it. And so I took 2 weeks. My wife and I were going on vacation, and I didn't tell her because I didn't know how she would react. So I took 2 weeks fighting with myself to see if I wanted to go back to work full time and do this job. And so we were in the airport in San Francisco coming back, and I thought, well, this is as good a time as any. And I broke the news to her. I said, honey, what would you think if I ran for Jerry Kurtz's job? And she told me, she said, so long as you don't bother me too much, I don't care what you do. And that's kind of, we've been married for 39 years now, and that's kind of what happens to old married people. And she's been a great supporter of mine. She's not a political person, but she's probably one of the most organized people I know, and she really compliments me well because I'm not so organized. So she's been wonderful. And my kids encouraged me to do this. I have 3 children. One lives in Fort Madison still. Another one lives in Cedar Rapids, and she has my 2 granddaughters. And then I have a son that lives in Maryland, and he's got 2 sons. So,
given that you are fairly familiar with Des Moines, as you said, in the legislative process, have you thought much about what committees you'd like to serve on if you were elected, and maybe some of the first issues you'd like to get to work on?
One committee that I definitely would love to be on is the Transportation Committee, considering my background. One of the things that I did as legislative board chairman here in Iowa is I was also part of a group in our union called the National Association of State Legislative Board Chairmen, and I was vice chairman of that for several years. And one of the issues we worked on was infrastructure as it pertains to passenger rail. And we, in the paper we ended up doing, we merged passenger rail with freight rail because we thought that would be the most economical way to do it. And I learned quite a bit while we were doing this particular study. And so I think that I can fit in very well. I found at my time in Des Moines that not a lot of people understand rail. When we got the money from President Obama to run passenger trains into Iowa City, I worked with various chambers of commerce. I worked with various environmental entities as far as trying to get this done. And so I think I'm uniquely suited to be on the Transportation Committee.
And one of the big talking points, it seems like, among a lot of Democratic candidates this year has been the tax credit issue and how the state should best entice or work with companies to come to Iowa. And Lee County obviously has had a big experience with this recently in the fertilizer plant. Where do you fall on that debate, and how do you think the state should leverage tax credits in trying to attract new business?
I think we've done quite a bit as far as tax credits. I think we've been fairly reckless with the budget. One idea I had for tax credits is that we look at a situation where our kids graduate from an Iowa high school. After going 4 years to an Iowa high school, they decide to go to either an Iowa university, college, community college, or go through an accredited trade program. If after 4 years of high school and completing one of those programs, we give them a tax credit. They stay another 5 years because studies have found if people stay 5 years in the state, we give them another tax credit. And that way we have trained people. Now, the things I've been looking at as far as attracting businesses, one of the big things is having qualified people to stick into the positions that they have. I think this solves a lot of those problems, and it also is a genuine middle-class tax cut. The tax credits and tax cuts we've had recently have done nothing but enriched the richest people in the state. 32% of this current tax cut, that I think is somewhere around $2.7 to $2.8 billion over 5 years, 32% of that is going to the richest 1% in the state. And we've done this for over 40 years, and that's why we have stagnating wages. And Iowa especially has not seen the boom in its economy as a lot of other states have seen. So I think we need to invest in our people, and I think the businesses will come in from that.
If the Democrats get into a position in January where they either have the governor's office or maybe one of the legislative chambers, what do you think are some top issues that the Democratic caucus as a whole should get to work on in January?
Well, I'm hoping that they get both the Senate and the House and the governor's mansion. It's going to be quite a stretch to do it, but it could be done. I think probably the first thing we need to look at is putting money back into corrections. And I say that because education, mental health, some of the other issues, yeah, we need to address that. We need to address that as soon as we can. But the idea of putting money into corrections right away, we are terribly understaffed there. That's a matter of life and death. And so I think we need to address that immediately. And then we can move on to the other burning issues that we have to, because we have a lot of things that need to be addressed. I think we need to address Chapter 20. Hasn't been good for this state. Definitely education. We look at what's happened with our university system. $20 million last year they cut from the Regent universities. This year they did $11 million, and as a consequence, University of Iowa has fallen 7 places in the rankings. ISU has fallen 3 places. we have to address education.
Are there any projects specific to Lee County or Southeast Iowa that you would like to see, or that you would like to help play a role in, that you think the state could help influence?
Yeah, I've talked about this quite a bit during during the campaign. I think we're moving into a new economy. I think Southeast Iowa is uniquely situated to take advantage of this. We need to look at, especially with what's going on in the world, we're going to have to look at alternative sources of energy and clean energy. And I think with Siemens being in Southeast Iowa, we've got the BNSF Railroad, which railroads are, and I learned this in my days in as a head of our legislative board. Railroads are ecologically sound. We've got Henniges and Keokuk that manufactures parts for Tesla. We have DuPont that makes a component for Tedlar that goes on the back panels of solar panels. We've got Griffin Wheel, which makes the wheels for locomotives and freight cars. I think we're uniquely suited. I think we take the industries we have and we leverage them to bring more of the new economy industries into the area.
And as you've been going out and talking to voters, obviously you've been knocking a lot of doors, having a lot of events. What are some of the top issues that you hear from them, and do you feel like people are particularly motivated this year to come out and vote?
Yeah, they're motivated, very motivated. Mental health, which really shocked me, that is a big topic on the doors. And some of the stories are just heartbreaking. And so that's why this tomorrow I'm going to be in Des Moines, and I'm going to spend the afternoon with mental health professionals, educating myself on the topic. I've learned a lot on the doors. I know I've got to learn a lot more about this. What we've done in this state with mental health is we've created a problem that is costing us a lot of money. We see stories of where law enforcement has to handle people that they shouldn't have to handle. They have to keep them for several days, maybe either in a hospital or in the jail. And then when they find a bed for them, they may have to. We saw one instance where they had to travel over 700 miles to find a bed. This is costing us a ton of money, and besides, it's inhumane the way we handle it. We need to get better with this. We're dead last in beds. We are 47th in the number of psychiatrists, 44th in the number of mental health workers. Like I said, it's inhumane.
And typically, Lee County in this district is Democratic leaning. Obviously, it's been held by Jerry Kurtz for I think about 10 years. But as we saw in 2016, Donald Trump won Lee County. Do you feel that has come up at all as far as maybe Lee County trending away from Democrats and heading more Republican, or what have you seen as you've been out talking to people?
Well, actually, it started in 2014. Governor Branstad won Lee County too, and then it transitioned into President Trump winning Lee County. I'm not sure that it's Lee County trending away from Democrats as they want to see change. And I understand that. I do too. But I think we have to be careful with the change that we get, because some of the things that we're seeing now, especially with the Trump administration, with their tax cut, all of a sudden we're taking on massive amounts of debt. It came out, I think it was Monday, that our deficit this year is going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of $780 billion. It's gone up 17%. It's gonna be over $1 trillion next year. I mean, we can't keep tax cutting and spending at the rate we're doing it. And I think people are going to see that. Interest rates are starting to trend up. The state is taking on more debt as far as their tax cuts. This has all the makings of an economic accident. I've said this since our forums in May, that we're being totally irresponsible. We talk about the fact that we've had a little bit of growth and a little bump up in wages, but at what cost have we done that? Have we sold the future to do this? And this is part of the problem that we have. We don't look toward the long term. We do things in the short term. We see, we got $200 for a tax cut maybe. Well, what's that going to mean to the counties and the municipal entities that are part of our government too? The backfill. We're looking at, in Lee County, all the entities, the county, municipal, school boards, everything, it's somewhere around $1.2 million. Now they're talking about doing away with that. What are we going to do if that happens? The burden's going to fall to our local structures. So we've got a model for this. Kansas tried this, and their model failed miserably. And I think we need to educate ourselves about this. That maybe take a little pain now for a lot of gain later.
And you mentioned that a couple of forums that have been held in the primary and now in the run-up to the general election. Are there a couple things that you've learned from those forums as far as some significant differences between yourself and your Republican opponent?
Well, what's kind of struck me is he's starting to adopt a lot of our positions on mental health. Now, he said the other night that we're funding mental health, which we're not, and I think he was referring to a bill that established crisis centers, 6 centers around the state. The problem with that bill is there was no money for them, and but he's for mental health. He was actually for Chapter 20, which surprised me, bringing back the language that we used to have pre-2017. I'm trying to get a list here of things because I was going to talk about it. There was about 5 things that he adopted that.
Do you worry that that's going to make it difficult for voters to discern differences between you two?
I don't think so. I think that, especially with the labor issues, I've worked on this forever. And somebody comes in brand new to it. Do they want somebody that's brand new to this, that's fought for things like better wages and an ability for people to bargain? Do they want somebody new to take on that fight, or do they want somebody that's been doing it pretty much all their life? So I hate to say this, but it's not about me getting elected anyway. It's about doing the best job we can for Southeast Iowa and all of Iowa. One big difference between me and Jeff Reichman is he is free market on everything. And I'll relate a story that last month I was invited by NASA to go out and observe the satellite launch for ISAT-2. My son is a deputy project scientist on ISAT-2. And one of the things, and Nate and I talk about this quite a bit, but one of the things NASA does for any of their projects is they have a mix of civil servants and private contractors. And talking to him, he was a project scientist before on Icebridge. He's the deputy on this. It gets messy. You know, they have to do a little give and take both ways, but nobody can quibble with the fact that they do some pretty amazing stuff. And I think that's how we should govern. I don't think we want to give all power to the government, and I don't think we want to give all power to private industry. I worked in a corporate bureaucracy. I can tell you it's every bit as bad as anything that you can get in a government bureaucracy. So I think that we should have a healthy mix, and we should see what works the best. I think that if we latch on to some ideology that like socialism or pure capitalism, I think we're really limiting ourselves, and we're doing a big disservice to our constituents.